Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here with the 158th episode of our first run through Book of Hours, playing as the artist. First run on YouTube, playing as the artist. So I have been working on a knock text. It's going to give me some lessons for door and wall. I suspect that we will already be over the limit after reading this first book, and the big challenge is that I will be getting a number of memories, but I don't think I'm going to be able to level it up today. So I think probably the efforts that I want to make will be to preserve whatever I get out of the book if I can, and then just simply direct my elements of the soul towards towards getting the persistent memories that I'll need later. Now it's early enough in the day that I don't exactly want to rule out any options here. So I'll keep doing my thing at the Sweet Bones, restoring elements of the soul and so on. We'll still talk with Mrs. Kill, but I think my main focus for today is going to be on getting things like the Ascendant Harmony, getting if I can, getting the Hive's Lament, just generally putting myself in a position where when the time comes to level up door and wall, which we'll probably do tomorrow in terms of in-game time, I'm not going to be, it's going to be a much more focused attempt rather than what I'm doing right now, which is sort of scrambling after the fact. But that's fine, because, again, I'll have options in terms of manual for departure. I suspect, actually, manual for departure would be pretty easy to work with after, simply because, it's my choice in terms of what I use, the points where I might, move something like spices and sabers up. I'll figure it all out. Like, transformations and liberations have already got me my top-level forge, so... And I don't think forge and knock are applicable to the inks. So that one is a particularly free wild card, I think. Anyways, let's focus on getting things done, and I can do the planning when I need to. Alright, so that regret already says I should make an effort on door and wall. I'll set it aside. There it is and can be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. I do have the outside option on a couple of things, so I'm not committed to not pursuing door and wall. If things sort of break my way as far as the requirements for the knock or forge, I'd even be willing to put the Didumos on the table just because we've got the Ascendant Harmony on the way. Conjure a bright sky music. A bright and ringing music which evokes the blue sweep of the lower heavens. So I also note that doesn't have knock. It's one for me to keep an eye on. So I'm just going to stay the course right now. I'm not going to bother adding anything fancy. Okay, another regret. Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. I suppose another way that I could look at this would be if I set aside the metal. So I've got 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. I really actually just need one more element. Okay, so technically I have all the elements of the soul that I need to be able to get this thing leveled up. So how about I bring the Fost back at the Sweet Bones, because that's always I always have the outside option of just using that for food, and depending on what Mrs. Kill gives me, maybe at the end of the day I do actually make that effort. The impulse might give me what I need for the Hive's Lament, which is a slightly higher priority for me than leveling up the... Don't see a good way to make this happen. Oh. Well, I can shut up. Here's the Hive's Lament, a beating in the heart. So that kind of sets me back in terms of the knock plan, but I'm going to wait for the end of the day because it's not that important for me to get the Earth sign back right away, although I do need to talk with Mrs. Kill. Let's hope it is equally possible to forget this again. So there's the Wormwood Dream. It's worth remembering on this one that the purpose of the Wormwood Dream is so I can actually pursue these moon texts. But I think it's also fair to say that I'm going to pursue those in summer at this point. I just have other priorities now. Okay, Foresight does help me with the leveling up, so it definitely looks like we're converging on leveling up door and wall today. Which again is not a shame from my perspective. What I'll maybe do here is I'm going to use the, I'm going to restore the FET, but that's so I have the option of earning some money at the end of the day. It is spring and the landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. Okay, the road to Janus, Limian Burzgash makes a series of prophecies regarding the initiates of the House of Silence, with intricate, if unhelpful, predictions on their passage through the house. The sixth initiate is priest and key, gate and church. He shall cross the sea and open the tide. He shall not be the 11th, yet there shall be 7 between them. In the first year of his time, the flower door is opened. So I always take that in terms of individuals. Willem Harries, who brought a key long lost. The bust is cast in highly polished bronze, so the sixth initiate is priest and key, gate and church. He shall cross the sea and open the tide. He shall not be the 11th, yet there shall be 7 between them. In the first year of his time, the flower door is opened. In terms of the 11th, that is Gervinius van Loren, by long trip, who returned to complete what he began. The 12th initiate is Salvation and Rack, steed and rider, who chooseth one blossom of 3, who casteth away the key, and whom the key shall not cast away, who comes after the flame and before the snow. So we've got a pattern for that. That's a little inconvenient as far as ordering my shelves goes, but in fact, even my overflow is so if I call this pattern, yeah, we'll work with that, I suppose. Okay, so we definitely know we're taking door and wall up to 9. And I suppose technically with what I have right now, I only need 4 elements of the soul. But again, I'm happy to... well, actually, okay, so... Let's use the tryst to get the earth sign. No point in leaving that undone. We are... Oh, I also need to read Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic again. Okay. Duratio Quircum. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. And before I go too much further, let's just use the the whist to earn the Newman. And the main reason for that is I just, in the worst case scenario, I just use it as an input for leveling up the item. So I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. So we've probably got 2 more rounds with Mrs. Kill before we need to make some decisions in terms of where I allocate my remaining elements of the soul. Like I said, a slight preference towards making the persistent memories that I can. Oh, there is one other thing I should have considered. Preliminal meter. I'm curious if I can get a curious hunch out of that. I can. So let me just double check. We've got 3, technically 4. I've already got 3 here. Yeah, let's do this, because I have the time for it. It'll give me some information that I can use. Okay, the storm doesn't do that much for me, but we'll hang on to it. Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. I'll start maybe folding out the FET. So I'll take the FET, I'll use that to read a book, and then we'll just use the core to earn some money at the end of the day. I don't exactly need it, but it's nice to have. A buzzing in the skull. Hive's Lament, a song of pragmatic sorrow. Intuition doesn't really help me there. There tisn't can be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent. Okay, time to make some choices. Just recently read this, so I'll say inescapable confinement here. Darashi Quercum. In English, the title translates roughly as The Account of the Oaks, but this is Nathaniel Darcy Evers' fascinating, if haphazard, survey of the occult properties of every tree he can find, not just oaks. In Persia, Taxa spicata, the yew, is called Sorkdar, which is the red tree. There they had long understood the grail root. In later times, the great king of Pontus had beehives set in the branches of the oldest of the female trees. The berries of the Pontine yew open the door to death, but the honey of their flowers opens a different door entirely. This was not the great king's Mithridate, but one who has suckled at the great yew fears poison no longer. Perhaps they should. Nathaniel here is distracted, however, by the toxic properties of certain inks. He does mention, more usefully, that the minor ink of power Ugol can be brewed through rites of the roots with the assistance of the aspect nectar. Okay, so what I'm looking at here, I've got 4 elements of the soul. Oh, sorry, 4 memories already. And I have 4 that I can apply. So technically that means I can save the inescapable confinement. Now I suppose before I do anything, the easiest thing for me to do is to consider something like a chair. So we'll consider Ambrose's favorite chair. That gives me a touch to work with. So that gives me 5 of 7. I'm also working on the curious hunch, actually. So I've got foresight, I've got regret, I've got a pattern. Oh, let's go for salt, because salt is something that Mrs. Kill won't generate. Okay, so curious hunch. I'm going to put this back up on the list. I think it's a little late for me to try and make a name day riddle, even though I think I could get away with it. Okay, so we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, and secret thresholds is 7. I better hope I counted this right. That would mean that I can use the core to go out on the moor. Okay. Or I could have used it to make money, but yeah, we'll go out on the moor. And again, my inescapable confinement is sort of my outside option if I did mess up the numbers. Oh, the one thing I didn't get was an old wound. I'll remember that for tomorrow. All right, and we get a stolen secret, no less, so that worked great for us. There it is and can be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but the scant trace of the continent in her accent now. Ambrose Westcott was a capacious gentleman, and he ensured the springs of his fortress were calibrated to bear any conceivable weight. 200 years on, the springs still do their duty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, just need 2 more. Technically 1 more if I want to use the inescapable confinement, but I don't. The Moth's Gift or mine? Okay, so Curious Hunch is good for 4 knock. That's good to remember. And it's persistent, so I think I'm actually going to try and hang on to that. A sudden, unlikely certainty. Gossip doesn't really help me with door and wall. So see where everything lands at the end of the day, and then I'll basically pick the things that I have to give up. Okay, the Almanac of Entrances, a handbook of sealed and unsealed byways and shortcuts through the bounds, compiled by Willem Harries in the 1860s during his term as librarian of Hush House. Harries discusses the role played by the Legion de Soule and the Company of the Wolf in Gold in warding the bounds against outside influences. He warns that bounds travelers may themselves be considered outside influences. The Mansis as Ys lacks walls. Ys and the Mansis both have their gates, and there may be no gate without a wall. Thus the paradox resolves, as all who walk and dream will learn. But the wood has neither gate nor wall, and so it is the wood whose roots may creep after us into the hours of our waking. By the way, this is probably, maybe this was obvious to other people, or I could be completely off base on this, but I do wonder if the key that Harry's brought is actually the solution to that that paradox. I don't know, I just never think about the people who solve those things for the first time, but I think that would actually fit with the description of him being the one who brings the key. Anyways, Kukurbit Prisoner Records, 1928. Accounts by Governor Collar's private secretary of interventions and experiments in the last years of the Kukurbit prison, focusing particularly on the hill children, wild wood things that have found a shape in the physical world. Something called a singlefoot, a horned mountain dweller, is brought back from some kind of embassy to the Grove of Green Immortals. Collars expresses his irritation that Gervenius van Loren refuses to assist in its containment. The singlefoot somehow conjures an earthquake that cracks the tower and enables its escape. Collars determines that it should not have been permitted to dream while kept beneath the earth. It had access to sufficient scale aspect to use its arts of hill and hollow to develop an old moment into an earthquake name. He mandates above-ground confinement for all hill children prisoners in the future. So there is our salt. Sea spray, depth sorrow. And I believe that is it for... I just want to double check that I don't have anything else in the queue. I guess for 17 seconds I have something from Mrs. Kill, so against my better judgment I'm actually going to wait on that. I can't see how it would... Actually, here's the better question. How is it relevant? So we have secret thresholds, we have foresight, we have regret, we have pattern, stolen secret, we have touch, a Newman, a curious hunch. We don't have a name day riddle, but we can't get that from Mrs. Kill. We have a Didymos, we can't get that from Mrs. Kill. The one thing we don't have is an old moment, and that we can't get from Mrs. Kill. So the better call is for me to actually level this up now. So we'll take the foresight, pattern, regret, stolen secret, touch, secret threshold, and salt. Yeah, we didn't need any of the persistent stuff for that. At last, I approach mastery. Improve this skill to level 8. And the big thing here is if Mrs. Kill does wind up giving me something that does have the forge or the knock, well, that just puts me one ahead. I'll sleep on that if I can. If I can't, well, then we just use one of the ones we already have. Satisfaction. There it is and can be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but the scant trace of the continent in her accent now. Let's go for the intuition tonight, just because the moon might be helpful with some of the stuff I'm going to be doing with the Edicts Martial. I don't think it, honestly, I don't think it will make a difference, but... Or actually, I guess the name day riddle would be more appropriate, but I also don't think I have anything mothy in that, so we'll still keep the gossip. Now that night has fallen, I can rest and perhaps dream on the day's doings. So the other big question that I'm going to need to face reasonably soon is what do I do with door and wall? So essentially what I'm looking for is something... So the two primary aspects of this would be knock and forge, but it's also fair to say that I've maximized them. So preliminal meter gives me the 10 knock, and transformations and liberations gives me the 10 forge. Traditionally, excuse me, what I've done is I've tried to level up something like Edicts Martial or the various ink skills, because those wind up making things that have sort of an outsized influence in terms of the kind of things that I want to build or I can use to sort of unlock other rooms. But again, none of those are options that are available to me. So if I take a look at Forge, some of the candidates would be Pyroglyphics, Great Signs, and Great Scars, Disciplines of the Hammer, Anbury and Lapidary, Meniscate Reflections, Bells and Braziaries, Spices and Savors. Don't see much value in leveling up the languages. And then for Knock... Great Signs and Great Scars is definitely not a Forge one, but I know we can do that. So Great Signs, Great Scars, Glass Blowing, Vessel Crafting, Surgeries and Exsanguinations. Now that might have a winter side. No, that has a heart side. So heart, what do we have covered by heart? Drums and dances and quenchings and killings. Okay, so that doesn't really move the needle for us. So I guess the way I'm thinking about this here is that it might not be a bad idea for me to bring up some of the lower level items, because in the end, those are going to be the things that I sort of cannibalize for more lessons when the time comes. In fact, one thing I'm going to need to think about a little bit is how do I get some more elements of the soul? Well, I know how to get more elements of the soul, but like what do I want to allocate to get those elements of the soul that will allow me to sorry, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. Like, I want to maximize the number of elements of the soul that I have to break apart during a Pneuma so that I can level up the skills. But of course, I don't want to prematurely commit some of these skills because, you know, I may find it better to, you know, I might want to seek certain outcomes that I haven't decided on yet. And those two things are kind of in conflict. But yeah, so the minimum skill that I want is going to be determined by the elements of the soul. So at some point, I just kind of need to sort of plant a flag and say, this is the direction I'm going. But for now, I'm just going to settle for finishing off the day. Granite slab, long, cold volcano blood. Last I approach mastery. And I suspect we're moving into summer at this point. Okay, sorry, I thought I may not have put something in the violet chamber. It is indeed summer, the Grail at her greatest. Current affairs. What is happening in the world beyond Brankrug? What visitors will the season bring? Now, I'm not expecting too much out of this. I think we'll maybe just do the opening moves of the day and leave it there. So, Mrs. Kill's mood always improves when I drop by. If you don't choose a topic, Mrs. Kill will offer help as a friend. So there are a couple of things that I want to get out of the way just at the start of the day. So we're into a new season. We don't have anything to fear from Numa. So I'm actually going to start reading a knock text right away. That's going to seem a little silly, but we already know what lessons I'm getting. At this point, there's really no reason for me not to do that. So we've got the manual for departure. We know we can read that without any challenge. In fact, I'm going to hold back on the skills that I'm using specifically so I can work with some of my other things I'm upgrading later. So in this case, we've got 4. Oh, actually, no. It looks like I do need to. It does look like I need to use the full preliminary meter to read that. Okay, my bad. So knock, a gate flung wide. Again, we're going to get door and wall, so more than we need. Now, I guess the interesting question here would be, so if I'm going for the Voyages of Furnishing of Oriel or Nyx Abelix, I mean, the more interesting one, if I'm completely honest, would be to read the 3 and the 3, which has a Newman. However, if I do that, I lose inescapable confinement. So I will start Voyages of Furnishing of Oriel, especially because Sea Stories is not going to be that hard to level up. I believe it's Desires and Dissolutions for that one. Yes. Which suddenly makes me feel a heck of a lot better about preserving that memory. Okay. Fusine. Perhaps you provided Moon, but not enough to match Mystery Moon. If you're lucky, you might still succeed. Don't need to worry about the luck. Moon, a culmination. I can master this mystery. Okay. So it seems to me like I have a few very obvious moves to do at the start of today. One of them will be to get touch. Yeah, actually I want to work out exactly which ones I can't get from skills. So check for touch. Check for Newman. I need a... So, secret thresholds, foresight, regret, pattern, stolen... Okay. Secret thresholds, foresight, regret, pattern, stolen secret. And then I have to give up the curious hunch, the name day riddle, Didumos, or an old moment. So I think on that one, let's go for the name day riddle, because that should be... Well, it should be easy for me to make as soon as I get a memory from Mrs. Kill, so we're already working on that. Let's go... I can never remember exactly what I need. Well, actually, none of this... So I do want to get the Wormwood... I do want to get the Wormwood Dream, but I'm not ready to get that quite yet. So I will earn myself a little bit of money with my core. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. And let's go through the list. So secret thresholds I can't get from Mrs. Kill. So that will come from an Almanac of Entrances. And the pattern and the salt are 2 things that I can't get from Mrs. Kill. And I don't see a reason to keep my Arab at this point. We'll keep the metal aside. What did I use my shaft for? Hopefully something important? Oh, right. The book I'm reading. Yeah, so what do I want to get the... I'm leaving the tryst... I guess we'll use the wrist to generate the pattern. What do I even want to do? Do messenger awaiting... Oh, can't do that one. Cardia's Delights. Okay, so all told, I've got 4 of the 8 that I already need. And then, of course, I can throw in, like, the Curious Hunch and such as well. But I'm going to resist the urge to work with that. I am going to just unpause so I can see what weather I'm working with. Clouds. That might actually help me in generating the Wormwood Dreams. I'm a little reluctant to... use that to generate the name day riddle. Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. Okay. Oh, shucks. Why did I take this one again? All right. Carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. So, let's just do an accounting here. So the Nocturnary, I use my Tryst. I use Edict's Marshal. So if I add the clouds, I'm 2 short. Okay, so we don't bother with that. I do, however, go to the Shrine of St. Januarius. We add the Gossip, which again, I'm trying to think why I wanted that as opposed to the other alternatives. I can't see myself using the Faust. So the name day riddle is what gives me... Yeah, so I know except for the, like, Foresight, Regret, and Stolen Secret. Let's say Foresight, Regret, Stolen Secret. So this is my little base for the memories that I need. Notice, by the way, that I'm not allowing for the possibility that I'm going to be getting the Wormwood Dream. Or sorry, the Tryst here is potentially getting the Wormwood Dream, but I actually need Mrs. Kill to help me out with those. So the idea is that Mrs. Kill is going to give me something that I can use to level up Door and Wall, in which case one of these moves up to the available pile. Or she gives me something that I can use for the Wormwood Dream, in which case I use the Tryst to generate that. It's very hard for me to imagine the whole day going by without one or the other being used, and it's worth remembering I do have sort of the free element of the soul when I restore the core. Now, the part I haven't thought about is leveling up Sea Stories. That I expect will be done with one of the spare core and what Mrs. Kill is doing, but again, at that point, I'm kind of... I'm either burdening Mrs. Kill's memory generation with multiple goals, or I'm just kind of, I don't know, I'm engaging a little bit of magical thinking in terms of the day's events turning out a certain way. But to me, it's one of these questions of like, well, what else do I assume otherwise, right? I've got my main goals, which is usually when I have something going from level 8 to level 9, that's sort of the, no matter what happens today, this is the thing that has to be completed. Once I have that in hand, the rest is sort of like, okay, well, if you can get around to it, great. The thing that's nice about this is that with Door and Wall, I do think I sort of said that I was going to be like leveling up Spice and Sabers. In fact, what I might do is just take the floor in general and move it up. So, 1 to Spices and Savers, 1 to Solutions and Separations, and so on and so forth. Level 3 is probably where things get interesting, because that's when they become more viable candidates to break up for memories. But again, that's a separate concern for later. But if the memory that comes out as a result of reading, I guess for the Knock one it would have been, I thought it was the Vagabond Desk, I guess it would have been. But Manual for Departure, right? If this winds up giving us a memory that I wind up not using, which is pretty unlikely, it's probably going to help with Door and Wall, to be honest. Oh yeah, actually, you know what? I probably shouldn't have read a book with pattern or something. One way or another, I think I'm going to wind up missing something. It doesn't matter. But yeah, again, we'll see what we can repurpose towards leveling up some of the lower level stuff, or possibly towards Sea Stories. But this is definitely a case of playing by ear, just because I don't see a major reason to. I don't see a reason to commit to a particular path, at least until I have a better idea of how I'm gonna get my Elements of the Soul up. Anyways, thank you everybody for watching. I know we had a couple of longer episodes this week, although I think most people don't mind them. I need to get some rest. My laundry's done, but I need to recover. But I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.